Hello, and welcome back to my YouTube channel, where I am kind of recording, broadcasting my own experiment of organizing all of my digital work with analog productivity tools. I've just taken action on something that I've been sitting on for a month, maybe longer, and I'd like to just record what I've done for posterity and anyone else out there who is trying to figure out a system to take notes in a way, well, it's basically a commonplace book that never ends. And I'm just going to flip the camera around and walk you through it. So here's my messy desk. We have a bundle. This should look familiar to any Everbook users as a bundle called Commonplace Book. And the idea here is, right, it is loose leaf pages inside of this bundle. So we can always add pages. Just keep that in mind. Always add pages, or if this little piece of paper is too thick, we can have volume 1 and volume 2. It never ends. Instead of just using a folder, I had thought about using like a 3-ring binder, but I did not go to the trouble of buying a hole punch for half-letter sized paper. Okay, I just finished reading Antinet Zettelkasten by Scott Scheper. Would recommend. Would recommend. I did not know this was a system that I longed for until I read the book. And so if you have implemented a Zettelkasten, an Antinet Zettelkasten, what I'm going to describe is what I'm doing for bib notes or bib cards. Instead of using cards, I'm using these half-size sheets of paper because that's what I have with me all the time. So that's just, it's not, there's no big philosophical take, it's just like purely functional. This is the format that I use for all of my stuff. This is just how I've decided to use this size paper to take my notes. So, very simple. What I've done here is following the Antinet bib card method is I write the bibliography information on the top, or on this kind of front page. I also wrote where I got the book and when I finished reading it, March 2025. Had I read this book before I started this one, that doesn't make any sense, I would have included my goal on this page. Why did I decide to read this? And then an outline or summary or something, kind of like a guidebook. If you've ever heard the idea of a book walk or looking at the table of contents to kind of give yourself a lay of the land on this front page. Anyway, while I'm reading the book, this is a library book, I used Post-it tabs to mark anything that I thought was significant. Now, I left in here only the things that I ended up marking, and this is a 600-page book almost, so lots of interesting things to note. There are a handful that when I came back around to them, I decided, nope, not interesting enough. It's not worth the effort to write down. But I wanted to leave these in for this video so you could kind of get an idea of what that looked like. So after I finished the book, I hadn't made this yet. So I didn't take notes in real time. After I finished, I went back and took notes and produced these. So on the inside, so this is page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5. And I know these are more extensive than what Scott recommends for bib card notes, but this is where I'm starting. I hope to be less verbose as I learn how to do this better. Okay, so this is going to go in here, but what are we going to do? Well, let me introduce you to this. So it's very simple. On the top cover, tell me what this is. I also have like other ones like this, journal archive, so things that come out of my Everbook to be kept go into that guy, and that just can continue to grow and grow and grow. Here we go. Inside, the first thing I have is a guide, so I wrote notes for myself on like, hey, how should I use this? And I guide page 1, then I have, if you flip it over, I have guide page 2, but there's nothing on page 2. And then for my index, planning ahead, I just did a sheet for each letter of the alphabet. Maybe I could have done like A on the front and B on the back, but you know, I decided to just do A front and back, so sorry, A1, let me flip that over, A2, B, B1, B2. So, what we have to do is install this into the Commonplace Book. And so as you can imagine, to do that, we're going to go to S for Scheper. Scott Scheper. Qrstuv. Were you singing the alphabet in your head too? So this is the first book, and so it gets the number 1. And I write just the author name, the title, and the year it was published. If I didn't have an author, if it was an anonymous work, I would just probably use the title to decide where it goes. And in this, if I have a particular author that I expect to read many articles and many books from, I might just make an index page that's just for them. So it'd be their name at the top, and then I'd list all of their stuff. And then so if, for example, if I had decided, hey, I'm going to read all of Scott's blog, for example, and use that as I'm going to have lots of things that I'm going to reference as sources, take notes on. Here I'd have an enter Scheper, Scott P, and then maybe an arrow to like indicate he has his own page after the alphabet pages. So he's number 1. What are we going to do? As you saw earlier, I prepend the page numbers of my notes with, I'm calling it the resource number. So this is number 1. It gets a 1 right there. Then it is going to be placed right after all of my indices, all of my index pages. It's going to go, let's do a wider shot, right here. Ta-da! All right. And then we can just fold it all back up. It's really hard for me to fold this up one-handed. One day I'll get a tripod for this camera that makes sense at my desk. Yeah, it's terrible. One thing I've thought to do, right, is I'm going to write main cards that will go into the Antinet Zettelkasten. How do I reference them back here? And I've decided to use just because I'm calling this a commonplace book, I would prepend CPB dot, and then the resource number, and then the page number from those notes. So for example, if I was referencing a note that's on page 1 of the Zettelkasten notes I just put in, I do CPB.1.1 or 1.2, for example. So I know, oh, I want to look up the original note I made about that. And there we go. So this is a ever-expanding perpetual resource. I guess you could keep this inside an Everbook if you wanted to. I'll be keeping it at my desk. Eventually, when I feel like this has gotten too thick as I keep reading books and adding notes, and not just books, but other stuff too, I'll make it into Volume 1 and Volume 2, and Volume 3 and Volume 4 and Volume 5 and Volume 6, and it will just keep growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. There's really no need to stop. There you go. Maybe that's useful to somebody out there to do something similar. Take care.